Hi there, welcome in. I'm Janelle, and the channel is Janelle Art. I've got one of the 4x8 blanks tonight. Looks like we're working with a bit of ultramarine blue, some purples, and something that's moving us or over towards a bit of a green-yellow. I'm going to be working using a pigment pen. I've chosen the Pigma Micron 10. Hi Maya, good to see you. How are you? We've got a whole stack of blanks to choose from today. See if I can get us framed in a little bit better. Do try to make sure that chat's not running over the top of everything. About the same. About the same. Had somebody come bang on my door earlier today, and which I don't love. It's a neighbor who they know I've asked them multiple times not to come over without texting first, so they wanted to park their RV 2 or 3 feet over my driveway, which would have, had they done that, would have still allowed me to be able to pull my car out. When I went out to run an errand, their RV was over half of my driveway, so I had to maneuver my vehicle around it, and I was, and am not, a happy camper about that. She asked, and I just kind of stood there with a look on my face like, really, no, I don't want to. That sounds like a major inconvenience for me. Particularly given that they've got enough room over on their side to park their RV. So she got kind of pushy, and I did not say no. And that seems to have been a challenge for me in recent weeks. So when I came back from running my errand and tried to pull in my driveway and had to maneuver around this RV, I just was, I was pretty cranky about it. So I was standing in the driveway kind of trying to gather my thoughts about what I was going to do about this situation when they came out the door and said, "Oh, is everything okay?" And just went, "No, no, everything is not okay." I'm looking at this trying to figure out how we went from 2 or 3 feet to your RV being halfway in my driveway. And then he had the whole discussion of, well, it's here so I can charge the battery up. I can't, he must have driven it from somewhere. It didn't just magically appear like Santa's sleigh. So I wish I had been able to be more diplomatic about it. But this is not the first time that they've done this. And so now I feel a little upset and taken advantage of, and I think it's just one of those weeks on the calendar where I think a lot of us are probably feeling like things just aren't going our way in ways that feel unfair. And I'm not really sure how to deal with that because I don't have a magic wand. But clearly, these folks were going to keep treating my property like their property until I found a way to deal with it, and I've tried to deal with it by being accommodating and saying, well, I guess if it's not going to be too long, like, a couple of hours, and then 3 days later, their RV was still across my property. But this time they really pushed over so that it was difficult to pull my car into my airport. So, in my experience, like, if you tell people like that kind of no in a firm and I'm unhappy way, a lot of the time they just sort of go, oh, okay, and then the next time they'll come and they'll ask for another favor and pretend you weren't grumpy. And the other alternative is they'll go, wow, last time our neighbor was grumpy, so maybe we should leave her alone. And I'm okay with that. Exactly. Maya's saying, yes. And remember, if you give them the little finger, they'll take the whole arm. That is exactly what they do. They took the arm all the way up to the shoulder, so that I almost had to park a half a block away from my house because where we live, we don't have on-street parking. We have to park in our driveways or our carports. And if you don't park there, then there's community parking, but that would have meant, yeah, I wasn't having it, I guess. So, if anybody's got tips on I don't know. Now, of course, like, my brain is kicking it over and I'm thinking, like, it would have been funnier if I'd stood there and yelled, how do you think Santa can get to my house with this in the way? But I didn't. And it didn't help that a couple blocks from getting home, the mailman about ran into me because he was driving way over the speed limit, and he often does through our neighborhood, and so that got my heart just thumping. And I was trying to, because when I left, the RV was across my driveway when I left. I knew it was going to be there when I got back, and I was, out the whole time going, how am I going to cope with that? And had kind of had myself calm down. And then, next week will be better, right? It's got to be. So Maya has a tip for me. The tip is no, 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 and no. Repeat as necessary. Hey, Wabbit. Are you hanging in there? So let's see if drawing some circles on paper will help me adjust my mindset. It usually does. And if that's not enough to do it, a little bit of arty companionship will usually adjust my mood to a less stressed out place. They're a bit of an odd bunch. I wonder about them. I see them go out and they're dressed in kind of all simple black attire, and There's 3 adults living in a place that used to have 1 adult, and it just kind of reminds me of some of the other things that I've seen in the last year. Like, where do you people go all day? What is it you do? You want to block that from the channel, Maya? Hi, Jan. Yeah, we don't have to time that out. You can go ahead and just full on block it from the channel. Let me just take a quick... You might not be able to. I know I can. Hide user on this channel. Bye-bye. Hey, Maya, I think I might have just said no. Did I say no? Oh, Jan. Thank you for the... Jan sent me a kitten video. That was... It was pretty good. I watched it several times through, and what is it about kittens, man? I should have been thinking about kittens earlier. That might have helped. It's their big eyes and their fluff. So I've had this background kicking around for a bit here, and it's it was a bit dark, so sometimes when they're dark I worry, how they're going to show up on camera, or I don't know. I think I gravitate towards the lighter ones. I just Cher is she's clear at the other end, so it's very peaceful in here. But yeah, she's had her food. I'm just trying to think. It's funny. Some nights she's just asleep in a little cat loaf down at the other end of the place, and then some nights she's right on my feet. And Ernest, well, hello, welcome over. How you doing? Everybody say hi to Ernest. So it was pretty clear here in Oregon earlier in the day, over in western Oregon. I'm not sure what's probably... We've got a mountain range running down the middle of the state, so the eastern part of the state gets a bit of a different weather system than we do here. But the rain has started up, and it is just one of those kind of wet, slapping, sort of a downpour that's just creating a soothing sound against the windows and against the roof, and so that I find very calming. I don't know. What do you guys think about rain? I think it's a. If I'm not out in, I have a different feeling about it when I'm out in it. But just to listen to, I think it's one of those calming sounds of nature that seems to block out the sounds of the modern world a little bit. So this big chunky pen, I got home and I thought I had asked for O1s, which are the real tiny little detail ones, and the local art store keeps these in a glass case so you can't just reach in and take what you want. And the person got in the case and got what I'd asked for, 0 1s, and I think she must have been looking at the pen this way because I got home and went 10s. Ugh. And sometimes I'll take stuff back, sometimes it's just it's too much trouble. And so I decided I'd keep these and put them to use because I know sometimes I get the backgrounds that are a bit dark, and I thought I'd give them a try. And first time I used it, it was kind of intimidating to go to a 10 because I usually like the O3s, so this one was quite a bit bigger. But with a little bit of practice, I've gotten the hang of it, and it actually, I like the dramatic sort of effect that I get, and I do need a bit of a bolder line on the darker backgrounds. So I know I'm always encouraging you guys to just get in and treat it like it's just a simple piece of paper, because it's a simple piece of paper, really. And even if you have a disaster, it's just a piece of paper. So I was trying to follow my own advice and go with it, and I think I'm finally starting to feel a little bit more comfortable using this big pen. Well, Maya says that she finds the rain not too calming and more annoying. That's valid. Ernest says, I love the rain, but I prefer the snow. Maybe that is just the Eskimo in me. I love the snow. I skied when I was younger, and I also had a chance to live in Alaska for a couple of years in Anchorage. And man, I do love the winter city. I'll tell you, I'd rather live in Anchorage than someplace like Minnesota. It just sounds. Minneapolis, Buffalo, those places sound really brutal. But Anchorage is just like Oregon springtime all summer long, temperature-wise. So lovely place to live. More outdoor activity than you could enjoy in a lifetime. So yeah, I don't get too much snow when I'm where I'm at in Oregon. I can drive an hour and get to it, but it doesn't really hit in the valley very much. So you're from Palmer? Oh, I lived there in the mid '90s, mid to late '90s, and I worked for the BLM down in south of Anchorage in their safety office. Yeah. So yeah, hey, what are we doing down here? How'd that happen? Yeah. So Maya is in Norway, for a little context. Wabbit likes thunderstorms and rain. Hi. Ernest, yeah, we see you over at Dan K's, right? So what do I use for the coloring? Generally, I'm using watercolor. Oh, let's take a mid-drawing break and just do a little mini art show. And sometimes I'll use other water-based medias. It could be Neocolor 2s and gel crayons and stuff like that. And I just put different sorts of colors and washes on these little squares of paper, or sometimes the 4x8s. And I build them up in layers. So some of these are just in their beginnings with, I think everything here has at least 2 layers on it. And then I will keep adding and adding until sometimes they get really coated. And these 2 are sitting here because I intend to take them over to the sink and give them a bit of a scrub with a plastic bristle brush. And so sometimes it goes on, sometimes it comes off. We just work it until it starts to be, have a bit of a pattern that I find wearing. And then I will add other media to create a drawing that looks like a field of rocks and pebbles. My goal with this is to just have something that's a bit of a mindfulness exercise, which is just, pretty simply put, it's a little meditation. And the meditation is that I concentrate on the way the pen moves across the paper. Just try to, not worry about next week, not worry about last week. Just try to be kind of in the space. And boy, these are all kind of looking the same to me, but the paints just accumulate and these sort of rounded shapes start to emerge. And once they do that, then I will grab them out and use them as a little exercise to get warmed up before I start the work of whatever it is. Sometimes it's a painting. And let me grab a couple of those real quick. Yeah. You left an 03. Yeah. This blue, Jan, this is ultramarine. Yeah, so there you are with fishing. Yeah, same thing. So with fishing, you kind of have to connect to, that line where the fly hits the water or the lure, whatever you're using. So these are what I call these sketches. These are the paintings that I'm working on right now. I paint all sorts of things over the years, but this is a phase that I'm exploring, trying to put together a body of work. I've got some ideas to get into, put my work into an artist co-op gallery in the early part of next year. So this one, I think I just find this one. Sorry if I hope I'm not making anybody motion sick the way I'm spinning that around, but I'm working with watercolor paints that have a granulating characteristic. And sometimes you put on watercolor paints and you'll get a nice smooth wash. Other times, with different colors, they might have particles that precipitate out. So I'm just using the paint to take advantage of that characteristic, looking for things that will resemble, like rocks. If you're walking along Cook Inlet or walking along the lake shore, whatever it happens to be. So we got to the art show early today, eh? Yep, yesterday I was working on this one on a live stream. I had to remediate the painting a little bit. I'd used a vintage paint in this space and it was flaking off, so I had to come in and scrub it out of there, and we're good today. No manganese blue flaking off, so yeah, I kind of like this, like that jade one. So yeah. Hey, Brad. Nice. Ernest says he walked along the Matanuska River as a kid. Yeah, you lucky. Yeah, one of my favorite places to go hike or go skiing is up in the Pass area. We would just take the Nordic skis and head up there, and I still I still have dreams about it, and I think fondly about it for quite a long time. I came back to Oregon to work in the family business, and I thought, oh, I'm just coming back to help them get things set up, and I'll be back up there. And then next thing I knew, we were opening more flower shops and expanding the business, and I never did quite get back up there. And I just thought for a long time um, that I would. I grew up in Oregon, but having gone up to Alaska for a job interview, I just absolutely fell in love with it. I came back to Oregon, and it was the strangest feeling of homesickness. This is the only way I can describe it. I just felt like South Central Alaska was my home, and that I needed to be there. And about 5 months later, I packed everything I had into my Volkswagen and headed up the highway. Oh, nice. Ernest says he panned for gold in the Hatcher's Pass and picked a bunch of crowberries and blueberries. Um, yeah, it sounds like I'm looking here. We've got Wabbit. Wabbit has a confession for us tonight that Wabbit's art empties the bank account. And Wabbit, welcome. Welcome to our club. This is the downside. The upside is you're about to just have a wonderful stash of creative art supplies, and I'm happy for you for that. Yeah, Brad says, silly, before I met Maya, I had money. Now I'm broke due to art supply addiction. Well, we're here to support you. I mean, not literally, but, shore you up in your habit. Oh my gosh, nice. Ernest says that his family would end up with 15 to 20 gallons of berries. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Maya says Maya's not looking into AASH, Anonymous Art Supply Hoarders, yet. But if we keep this up, guys, we could have the premier. Um, what do you call it? This could be the starting point for that. As long as one of the steps in that program is to get your art supplies out and use them. Nice. Was up near went up one of the years I was up there. I had a friend who had a cabin up near Talkeetna, and we went up and picked blueberries, and that was really the only time that I ever encountered the dreaded and fabled sparrow-sized Alaska mosquito. Those things, they can literally bite you through your clothes. It's insane. Uh, but that was a good trip. We dip netted salmon out of the Copper River and had blueberries and foraged mushrooms, and I wasn't in on the mushroom foraging. I'm still a little puzzled about that to this day, because blueberries being ripe and mushrooms being able to be foraged at the same time kind of breaks my brain a little bit. Mushroom foraging in Oregon is a fall winter kind of an activity. Nice. So Ernest is, he's got some art supplies, guys. That's kind of the threshold that you want to hang around here. You just all it takes is just having a little bit of art supplies, and then everybody will egg you into get those suckers out and doodle around with them. So, do you do any fly tying of your own? I've always thought that that was a beautiful. It's an art form, I think. Seen some of the hand flied ties that are just like these little tiny works of art. They're so beautiful, and all the more beautiful because they're utilitarian. They're practical. There's a something to be done with them. Wabbit says never can have too many art supplies. I think theoretically, if you have enough to cause an avalanche that topples down on you and pins you down so you can't do art, that might technically be too many art supplies. But everything up to that point is just the right amount. I think I was telling everybody the other day that I might have pushed the limit on too many art supplies with some acrylic paint that I opened the box where I kept it and saw that some of the tubes had solidified into chunks of plastic. So I think if you can't get to it to use it, that might arguably be just a little bit too much. But if you can eyeball your stash and it still brings to mind ideas about what you might use it for, then it's a good amount. It's an okay amount. Alrighty, let's switch to a smaller pen and add in some more little circly pebbles. So Ernest says, I have a funny story about those buggers. I was playing with friends by the Matanuska River and felt my shoe come untied. I stopped and looked down and couldn't see my feet because of the skeeters. I think some of them, especially if they form teams, they would be big enough to remove your clothing. they are, they're epic. They're just, I don't know what they have in Texas, but they don't have anything on Alaska mosquitoes. Mm. Oh, okay. So Ernest says he doesn't tie his own flies, but he whittles lures from time to time. Brad? So I will say, I think one needn't go to extremes to have art supplies. I mean, we certainly can. Um, I may or may not have had a bunch of things in the shopping cart on Jerry's Artorama online website. May or may not have had a number of tubes of very expensive and very beautiful watercolor paint last week. But even with a simple set, you can get into all kinds of different art at some pretty accessible price points. So Brad was telling us that he found watercolor markers on sale at his local art supply place. So I know he's been playing with those. And markers are kind of fun because they're a bit of a hybrid art material. You can put the tip of the brush on a palette and add some water and swish it around and get some of the pigment out of the pen, and then use a brush and apply it in a traditional watercolor way. You can use the marker right on the paper. I mean, all kinds of things you can do with that. I very often, when I'm painting the backgrounds, I'll use a product called a Neocolor 2. And here in a second, I'll grab the tray of those and let you see what I'm talking about. They look like a Crayola coloring crayon, like the kind that we used, at least in American schools. Most of the kids grew up using crayons. And they're just a wax crayon with colorants in it that you can apply to paper. So the Neocolor looks like that, and it actually works quite a lot like that. So I love that sort of nostalgia. It harkens back to the happy hours I spent as a child coloring. But then you can add water to it, and it instantly dissolves into a very nicely pigmented watercolor paint. And they come in, I'm going to say, and I'm not joking, but I think they come in 86 colors. There's a little bit of a closer view on that. Oh, we've been working with some here. Yeah, so they look like crayons. They are crayons. They are and this blew my mind when I saw this. Somebody showed this to me in an art supply store, and I went, what? How does that work? Water soluble, wax, pastel. To me, is wax going to be water soluble? I don't know. That doesn't seem to make sense to me. Let's get a little more contrast there. So what is that? What does that mean? What is that magical sort of a thing? Just got a glass of water off screen here. It does this. It turns itself into paint, just like that. Wizardry, exactly. Ernest, it was lovely to see you in here. Please stop by and hang out with us anytime. So you get a bit of a hybrid. Like you can get the smoothness of the wash of the paint, and you can also you can come back and work back over it after it's dried. You can work into it while it's wet. It blends very easily. Um, I found them online for around $2.50 each, so they're not the least expensive material there is. But you could get like a 12, the set of 12 will give you all of the basics, and as you can see, they blend quite nicely. So you could get started actually with just probably 6. A yellow, a red, a blue. It's hard to resist the purples because they're just gorgeous. I started picking them up on my forays out into the Wednesday wanders. If I stopped in an art supply store, there was one that I would, if we went through the town, I would say, yep, we're stopping, and I would just pick that up as a souvenir. And I started with buying some of my favorite colors, and eventually, just this year, I actually splurged and found out, which ones I didn't have and ordered those online. So I have the whole set of those to work with. But you don't have to supply yourself quite to that level. You can certainly have a lot of fun with just a handful of your favorite colors, things that you find appealing. So one of the other ways that I like to get the media to start working is to just spray water into it. I'm going to set these aside because I don't really want to spray the whole pan of crayons here. They'd dry out, but it's just easier not to get them wet in the first place. So, can you see how the water hits it and it just immediately starts to dissolve that pigment and turn into a working paint? I worked with them for quite a long time. Was just as a sketch tool. I never got them wet because I wasn't working in wet media. I was doing dry drawings, and they worked very well for that. And then, as you do, you work with your media a little bit, and you get an idea, and you give it a try. Wabbit says, just a handful. Do I know my audience? Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm hoping to lure in some unsuspecting folks who they could we can't scare them right off the bat. Gotta make it accessible, I think. Don't we? Maybe we don't. I get a lot of joy out of this. I mean, I would rather I'd rather buy art supplies than what the heck, golly, all kinds of things. I'm on the I'm 63, so I've had a lot of chance to buy a lot of things in life. Like, when I was young, I would spend my mad money on things like music or clothes or whatnot. I've got all of the clothes I need. I have all of the music I like, and I get a lot of joy out of buying art supplies with my spare change. So you do you, but that's how I do me. and, and I know I'm not alone in here. So, but I really love how quickly you can build up a complex, layered, colorful background using these crayons. So, sometimes paint, sometimes this. And since I have tagged this mixed media, let's really just do it and get some paint in here too. It's a little bit of sky blue. Silly wabbits. The power to know what we can and can't control. We can't control the flow of the watercolor very well. Somewhat, but not exceptionally well. And the wisdom to know how to make that effect work for us. I'm going to be careful here. I know that I don't want anybody who's in a formal recovery program to feel like they're being mocked or goofed on. But there's wisdom in that. That wisdom applies in many areas of life. Oh, I'm coming in with some Lucas, I think it's yellow green or green yellow. Doesn't matter really. But a chartreuse can sometimes just, if something's looking a little drab, love a nice chartreusey green. What's we got here? All right, Brad, have a good day. Have a jolly merry day. Thanks for coming in. It's good to see you. I'm just going to go with a little bit of quinacridone gold. It's a color that if you put it in a puddle of water, it will bloom out in these almost fractal-like patterns that I find quite delightful. I was painting tulips a while back, and I, without thinking about it, grabbed the quinacridone gold and thought, oh, I'll use that for the center, the little stems in the center of the flowers, or the stamens, and that little bit of pollen. And As soon as it hit the water, the gold just went right out to the edge of the pedal. It's like, oh, that wasn't the effect I wanted. It just eventually overcame it with outlining. It worked out okay. So it looks a little colorful and chaotic. That's okay. It'll dry down. We'll take a pen to it, and sometimes I find the most visually confusing backgrounds. Sometimes those turn into the better pebble paintings. So I've learned to just let it kind of be in process. So we'll set that aside to dry. Full credit for mixing the media. I think Ernest has skipped away, but the crayons can also be used directly on the palette. I will sometimes scribble them onto the palette and just add water and then take them from a little puddle of paint into the... What does not want to open? Right into the painting. That goes. This is a craft mat, so I would be cautious not to use anything that stains. Some of these colors are can tend to be staining. You know, the usual culprit of phthalo green in particular. Small paintbrush. Get this nice and dark, and we'll use it to drop in some shadows. So for $2 and basically $2.50, or you know, I think they were like $2.75 in the art supply store, and I think I got them for $1.95 online. You can get a wide variety, and the color line in the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2 are they're pretty classic, like Prussian blue, ultramarine blue, cadmium red, as well as some other maybe more fashionable colors. Or I'm just going to drop in a shadow where the rock overlaps the other rock, letting the rock on top be light, the one down below it will make it a little bit darker. I feel like I'm rushing a little bit here. Sometimes I take time and I work very deliberately, but most of the time I try to move along at a fairly good clip. Um, if you're starting out, you're gonna work more slowly. You're gonna work your whatever your pace is. That's okay. You don't have to work at my pace. You find your own pace that works for you. If I don't push myself to work a little bit quickly, I have discovered that I have the habit of just overworking. And if I can get a shadow in there in one or two strokes, that lets the pigment deposit on top of the other pigment without moving it around. And one of the steps to come, I will work a little bit more carefully, deliberately. But for now, I just want to drop in the shadow without re-wetting the paint and getting the sediment in the granulation all up into this new water that's coming onto it. So this is, you can see it goes on, just works like paint. And it kind of blows my mind that this thing that looks just like it's very humble. It looks like a school child's crayon. But yeah. Marla, hello. So let that dry down, and then the next step, I would bring in some white media. Might be something like the opaque white ink. And let's just, what the heck. So in the jar, it is quite thick, and water soluble, so I can work a little bit of that out. And I probably have enough for 4 paintings right there, because a tiny touch of this stuff just seems to go a really long ways. And it is quite stark, so when I first got it, of course, I experimented with it and just found it to be very opaque and very, very stark. So I like to dilute it out a bit, and I also like to mix in a touch of a color to bring the value down from that real high white. And at this stage, it's going to look a little bit harsh. After it dries down, I'll come back in with just a brush that's just got a touch of water, so it's just barely damp. And I'll work it to blend in those sharp edges where it needs to calm down a touch. Hi, Above and Beyond. How are you doing? It's nice to see you in. So I'm looking for the high points on the rocks. I'm looking for the places where one rock overlaps another rock. And that leading edge, I want to lighten it up a little bit. And this will help create that illusion of depth. I'm not really going for a realistic representation. It's quite stylized, so we don't have to strive for too much perfection, so much as the impression of. I do find that this ink dries down pretty quickly too. A little bit. It is Kuretake's white ink, highly opaque white ink for highlights and corrections. Zig is the sub brand, and it's their. Uh, it's sold for cartooning. Really, I think is the market, but a lot of watercolorists still use it as well. It's a water-based pigment. Don't leave it in direct sunlight. Well, I'm in Oregon, so that won't be a problem. Made in Japan. And Kuretake is the same. I went with this one because I also use their Gansai Tambi, the Japanese watercolor pans. And so I thought I'd stick with the same brand, and hopefully the products will work with each other. And they seem to. I haven't had anything separate or flake off or behave badly. All right, now I've got enough blue mixed in there. It's starting to feel like I'm gone from highlight to something that's working in the shadows. It's all kind of relative. Yep. So it just depends on what you're adjacent to. Colors can seem to be vastly different things. You know, a blue will look different if it's positioned next to a red compared to when it's positioned next to a yellow. And what is a highlight in one part of the painting could be a midtone or a shadow in another area. So that's what I mean when I say it's relative. I feel like this ink also it lifts out pretty nicely too. So I can re-wet it and then come in and bring it out of there. Now the watercolor crayons, I will leave those on the mat. I have not experimented with leaving the white ink on the mat. It is water soluble, but I think I will just go ahead and clean that up. Just one of the things I love about water media is that's what I was thinking. I thought it might dry down into there's a little bit of texture on this mat, which is what makes it really handy for because of the texture, when I rub the crayon over it, a little bit catches, and that's how I'm able to quickly just scribble it down and turn it into paint. All right, so that has dried down into around the edges, so I think it's going to take a little bit more cleanup with a brush and maybe some actual soap to get that to come up off the mat. So if you're going to use the white ink, it's probably a better idea to use it on your palette instead of on your craft mat. But you know, whatever is whatever is handy for you. I kind of like to clean stuff up. I don't like to have pigment come back and reactivate when I come in next week with a different color layer. Yeah, so this is drying down. We've still got a little puddle of water there at the edge, but so we get a very nice sort of an impressionist, blended, dreamy effect once that starts to dry down. And some of the lines are still visible. So that's, I really like that effect. I think it adds to the mixed media look to have a combination that looks like it was put on with some of it with a paintbrush, some of it with a crayon or some sort of a mark gets left. The hand of the artist still remains visible in the work. I had quite a bit of water in that, so it's not a surprise that it's still a bit damp. All right. So set this guy aside to dry. Wabbit says, I remember how each of my spots were made. I do too. There is a bit of a history on our work surfaces, isn't there? A memory spot. I like that. All right, check in with the chat. Do I use special watercolor brushes? Yeah, Maya covered that. I just use regular watercolor brushes. I mean, explain special. You could spend $75 on a watercolor brush. You know, get a fancy handle that I can use to create scores and move the paint around. And made in Japan, Winsor and Newton. Or I have some that I consider special. They belong to my grandmother, and you know, back in her time, she had quite a few brushes that were made of camel or squirrel hair, so I take care of those and I treasure those. But in general, actually, you'll see that kind of odd triangular handled one that I have. I bought a set of these, and they're actually a discount brand. I thought it was Montmartre, but it's Montmarte, and they came in a plastic cylinder, and I think I paid something like $3.99 or $4.99 for about 12 of these brushes, and I thought, well, you know, how good can they be? I might be able to use them for a little while, but for the price, I bought them at something like a discounter store like Big Lots, and they've actually performed very well. They don't lose hair. The ferrule where it meets the handle is nice and smooth, and there's this sort of triangular point. What is it gets the brush ergonomically positioned with a place for my thumb to rest. And I actually find these brushes are probably one of the most economical brushes in my stash. And I mean, I'm using them almost every live stream. You'll see this one. So, I mean, you can spend a lot. You can spend a bit. Um, I recently was trying Mimic brushes. MIMIK. I think Maya might use these. I think we were talking about this. They're a synthetic brush. They're shaped nicely. The ferrule, which is this metal part where it joins the handle, it's a bit rough. It could be a little smoother, but it's not bad. I mean, sometimes brushes, you'll tell a cheap brush because this edge, when you hold it, will cut into your finger. So it's a good quality brush. Like this is a royal brush, and I can't even, there's a little bit of a silicone here, and I can't even feel the sharp edge of that ferrule. It's also nicely polished and crimped down. The bristles are set in it very well. But if if it's an expensive brush but it doesn't fit your hand and it doesn't carry the water, I mean, it's no good having an expensive brush that doesn't work well for you. The trick is find a brush that works well for you. And one of the ones that I have that's one of my favorites, it's kind of sitting over here to the other side because I need to do some repairs on it, was a Sumi-E brush that I bought in a Japanese grocery store for, I think it was $2.99. And there's a bit of a bristle. It's a soft bristle. I'm guessing it might be hog bristle of some kind, but it's pretty soft. And then there's a little center in here. I don't know. I've worn it down a bit, but it's almost like a little piece of wool kind of in the center there. And this brush makes so many wonderfully expressive lines. I refuse to believe that it is at the end of its lifespan. So I'm going to try to effect some sort of a repair on that. So squirrel hair has the capacity to hold a lot of water. So you can work a wash or keep your paint moving. A synthetic brush tends to not hold as much water, so you just get your stroke. I find I just get the stroke going, and then I've got to pull the thing up, get over, get more water, come back, try to get in the flow of it, and just in those few seconds, you can get a line in what you were drawing as the paint starts to dry, or you just lose the continuity of line. So. Yeah. Kolinsky, which are, they're mink, right? Kolinsky or ermine, some sort of creature that it makes me sad to think about that we've, used them to do anything other than let them run free across the tundra doing their animal living. But like I said, these brushes are from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and brushes are not infinite. The more you use them, the more you break little bits off of the bristles, and I have some that are just kind of worn down to a nub. I'm sure they were probably a quarter inch or more longer when I got them or when my grandmother got them, but I find ways to use them. So there's I'll swing the phone over and just let you see the different shapes for different jobs. I will say, if you start out painting with a synthetic brush, you are going to develop habits that are, it's not going to be a problem for you like it was for me because of, like, any kind of tool you use in anything that you're doing. It could be in the kitchen with your favorite paring knife. You ever have a knife that gets worn out and you've got to buy a new paring knife and you've been using the other one for 25 years. And that new one is just, it doesn't fit your hand. It doesn't, the blade comes down and you give yourself little cuts when you're just trying to peel a potato. It's the same thing with anything. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Marla says, I'm always interested in how tools inform your practice, and thanks for sharing. You're welcome. And thank you guys for sharing. I see you there in the chat just talking to one another with the art tips and the support. I just love to see that so much. I appreciate it. Yeah. And with enough practice, I will make friends with these new synthetic brushes. I have a couple of them that I use, go-to brushes that are just rounds with synthetic bristles. I've got a pair of these. I think I've got a number 2 and a number 4, and they hold water pretty well, but they're stiff enough, and I use them when I come in for those the second step when I want to bring in a little bit of water and start re-wetting and moving stuff around. Because they are stiffer, they let me scrub into the paint just a little bit. So for this purpose, the natural hair bristle brushes, uh, they would be a frustration. So I think part of the work that we do when we're working on studies is to learn, what our tools are good at, what they're not so good at, and to keep looking, if we've got an idea about what we want to accomplish, to keep searching for a tool that helps us do that. So, see there's a bit of a harsh line in this pebble here. So I want to soften that, and if I used a squirrel brush, it would just flop over and it would just go back and forth across that. It would get everything nice and wet, but what I'm trying to do here is to break up that pigment and soften that line a little bit. So the synthetic bristle just does a really nice job. And it helps me get that, I've got the pigment back into suspension in the water, and I'm using the brush to stroke it down into that corner to make the shadow at the edge of the pebble. Did somebody summon the cat? Did you guys call the cat? Is that what happened? What's going on, buddy? Is it dinner time for you? I'm guessing it's within 10 minutes of 11 p.m. where I'm at here. That is the come feed me. Come use your thumbs, human. Yeah. So, oh, that's very cool. Above and Beyond says, I paint, you work with clay, mosaic, make multimedia boxes out of cigar boxes and old boxes, draw. Oh, and you cut hair. That right there is an art form, for sure. That's very cool. I would love to see more of that. So I always encourage people to explore the little. There's a little plus sign at the bottom of your screen if you're on a phone on YouTube, and if you hit that plus, it'll take you to a whole assortment of things. One of those is community, and you can upload a photo and write a little description if if you don't already have a channel. And you can share things that you're working on, and I love to see those photos. I'll put links to your community post if you want to put up a photo of any of the work you're doing. I think it's a really terrific way to get some positive feedback, and that encouragement can just really feed your practice to have somebody say, wow, that's great, keep going. And every once in a while, somebody will even come along and say, that's so great, I want to put that on my wall. I want to trade you some money for that thing, or some art. Wow, you are into a lot of things there. Oils, acrylics, a little watercolor, acrylic and alcohol inks. I have I've dabbled in the alcohol inks. Oh, are you helping? Buddy, that didn't help very much. Well, that wiggly one is courtesy of the cat's help. All right, Maya, I'm going to go drop a little cat food in her bowl so that she's not in the middle of everything. I will be, just give me 20 seconds. Yeah. Yes. We have food. Oh, thank you, everybody. One of these days I'm going to wise up and I'm going to put a food bowl and the cat food here at the desk so I can just um, reach down and feed the cat. But I somehow think you guys might enjoy the nightly, um, the nightly kitty songs and demands. So I don't know. We could have a poll. We could put a poll up about whether or not we should feed the cat at the studio workbench or around the corner. Oh golly. So Above and Beyond says that they have cats and there's always cat hair in their resin stuff. Oh, I feel for you. There's always cat hair in the watercolor paint. So, which is easy enough to remove. I can't imagine your frustration at dealing with the resin. Yeah. She does come and sing us the cat song fairly on a fairly regular basis. I've thought about kind of moving it closer so I can just sort of make everybody happy at the same time, but I'm concerned that if I have her associate the studio space with cat food, that's probably not the best arrangement. And also for my own good, I probably ought to get up and move around a little bit more than I do. I don't know how. Do you guys find that you just get into the work zone and then the next thing you know, you stand up and you're like, "Wow, I was kind of in one spot for too long." It is it is good to consider the ergonomics of what we're doing and the impact. I think Above and Beyond will tell us all about that, being a person who's cutting hair. Sometimes the creative work we do is can be really hard on our bodies. I had taken a break from, I think it was probably screen printing or printmaking of some kind, and wanted to loosen my work up a little bit. And somebody suggested that I just work with watercolor for a little while because it would require me to loosen up and not be so controlling with the media. And printmaking, you're controlling every little line and the ink density, and um, you can really get into the weeds or sort of lost in that process. And so I had taken their advice and started to play around with watercolor. And of course, at first, it was tremendously frustrating because I couldn't get it to do anything that I thought it should do. But I kept working with it, and in the process, I guess the best way to describe it is I surrendered to the process a little bit and began to explore what it was that the media was doing rather than coming at it from a perspective of having an idea in my head and then wanting to express it and wanting the media to exactly replicate the creative idea I had in my head. Which is, as a printmaker, you sort of have to engineer everything. And depending on if you're doing a reductive print, you have to work backwards as you cut away the linoleum or whatever media you're working with. But every time I switch to a different media, it teaches me a little something. So I think some artists they find their media and they work in it. They're comfortable there. Their creativity is fed in that. That's not me though. I've got to work in a lot of different media sequentially. Usually not too many at the same time, but I'll work on something kind of intently for a while and then I'll move on to something else and then sort of rotate back through. So it's okay to do either one. If you get burned out on something and you just don't feel like working in that happens. It doesn't mean you're done being an artist. It just means you're an artist who's a little bit burned out on a particular media for a period of time. So keep going, switch it up. Wow. Marla says she's working on a diamond painting that is 24 by 36. That's huge. Whoops. So I'm kind of scrolling back in the comments here. Oh, so Marla, are you... Oh, okay, somebody asked me knitting. Your diamond painting, all right. So Above and Beyond was a graphic artist a long time ago. Worked in a dark room. Did you do color separations or anything like that, or just black and white? One of the things that Maya and I have, each of us, worked in sign shops. So yeah, that surprised me so much to learn because I think that's stuff. I've met fellas who worked in sign shops. Sign shops out here in the United States tend to be sort of a lot of fellows work there, not so many women. At least back in the sign production part of it. There's people of all types of people. You find them in the front office or sales in the sign shop at back, pulling the squeegees and painting the signs. That's can be it can be a place where you don't find a lot of women, I think is what I'm trying to say. But my dad ran a Heidelberg printing press, 4-color process. I worked for a company that made lithographs for artists, and they did quite a bit of art printing for things like, the color plates that would go into coffee table books and that kind of stuff. So I kind of grew up around, print and bindery. But that smell of printing press ink, right? It's kind of a blend of ink and solvents, and with a dash of the chemicals from the dark room. Kind of funny, how there's some really sort of awful smells, but when you add a dose of nostalgia to them, they become a bit sweet in the memory. Ugh, Maya, I can hear that guy out there. It's almost midnight. He's out there moving that RV right now. Okay, weren't here earlier. I gave myself a meltdown over the neighbor's RV blocking my driveway when I came home. So I asked him to move it. He's just now getting to it. I don't know how many times I picked up this little background and just gone, nope. But it kind of came together all right. Above and beyond. Proudly states I'm ADHD. Oh, nice. So Marla's big diamond art is a Silver Husky by Peggy Collins from Diamond Art Club. I bet that's really a beautiful subject for that. So I worked in sign shops back in the mid 1980s when we were just getting a vinyl cutter and a plotter. The fellow who owned the shop was trained he was trained in England. He was apprenticed out to a sign shop, and like when he was about 12 or 13, his family just said, "You're going there," and so it was a very old school shop where they did hand lettering, lots and lots of trucks, log trucks, and business vehicles with the logos painted on the sign, that kind of work, and lots of things like the store name and the sign hours painted onto glass with a leaf backing around it. And yeah, it did. It gave me that impression too. Silly Rabbit says it sort of looks fruity, and I think it's there's a little orange and a little lemony, and some. Yeah, it does kind of has that vibe. Oh my God, Maya, that is what it is. As they were standing on my porch going, we'll just leave it hanging over 2 or 3 feet. It won't be any trouble. It'll be gone by morning. Oh my God. But it's if it's in your driveway, I don't care when it goes, but when it's in my driveway, it needs to go away now. It's like Randy Quaid from National Lampoon's Worst Christmas Ever. Oh, it's good we're already laughing about it. Oh, why? Okay, that's it. I hadn't thought about the National Lampoon holiday movie, but that's made it better. Uh, you are so helpful. Which just I will say thank you to Maya for her helpfulness instead of waiting to my usual last 3 seconds of the video. Oh yeah, no, I am I am always so grateful for your friendship and help. Hmm. So the thought crosses my mind that we are uh, Wabbit says he loves the one where he cuts into the Thanksgiving turkey and it turns into dust. I, I'm torn between two of them. Now you know I love cats, but the one where the cat bites the Christmas tree lights, it's so, it's so wrong and so bad and so funny. I just lose it every time I see that. But the part where what's her name, Beverly D'Angelo goes into the garage and she flips the light switch, and Chevy Chase is out in the yard and he's unplugging stuff and plugging stuff in, and it all comes back to the light switch. That gag has me rolling every time I see it. He's trying to get the lights on the house to light up, and it's all been plugged into one of those outlets where it's controlled by a switch on the wall, and he is just trying everything except for the light switch on the wall to get the thing to light up. And she just so blithely comes out there and floop, flips the switch. It was like half the fights my parents ever had were stuff like that. I'm just chuckling to myself thinking about those goofy movies. Yeah, yeah. Imogene Coca, I think, played was it the aunt or the grand? They just she kind of dies mid-adventure, and they just bundle her up like she's a Christmas tree and strap her to the station wagon. Now, if you had ever asked me, do you enjoy stupid humor, slapstick comedy? I would have said, just no. Yeah, no. And those are the kind of movies that you walk into somebody's house and they're playing on the TV sort of just coincidentally. And I find I have to sit down and watch the movie and get everybody else in until we're all just rollicking and laughing. It was a somewhat of a. It wasn't a tradition in the sense of, okay, let's sit down and watch the National Lampoon movie, but it would always be on kind of at the holiday time, almost always. And if we would notice it was playing, would get my family. Other than my mom, never would sit down and watch movies. She was always, trying to get whatever dinner together or whatever. But the rest of us would camp out and just enjoy that absurd this kind of humor of the National Lampoon holiday movies. So we had some comments in here a bit ago about ADHD, and I was diagnosed with ADD, or back at the time they called it adult attention, AADD. Now I think they call it all ADD. Oh, what about Bob? Holy cats, that's funny. That's yeah, that one gets me too. So, yeah, I'm autistic and ADD, so regular alphabet soup up in my head. And trying to cope with the attention deficit is part of why I started a mindfulness practice. I used to be able to take Ritalin for that, and then, as we age, we've got some health problems, so you're not always able to keep taking medication, and for that matter, sometimes those medications can stop working for people. So it's good to have some other strategies along with medical if you're going to use medication, and mindfulness does help me practice being focused so that when I'm, doing some other task that requires me to, or trying to only do one task instead of the 6 tasks, that I can recognize that I'm going a lot of directions. I can take a breath, and I've practiced just doing one thing at a time. So this looks like I'm doing art, but what I'm doing is training my brain to do one thing at a time. Your mindfulness practice doesn't have to be punishment. You can work it into something you like to do. And I feel like it does make a difference. Like I am able to more often recognize, oh, I'm a little scattered. Oh, I'm trying to put on my sock and feed the cat and, refill the water bottle, and, to the point where it's just nothing is getting done because I don't have enough hands and I don't have enough attention, and it's just physically impossible to do all of those things at the same time. So I'm not saying that I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying that this is the cure to ADD, but it is a sort of practicing a skill that has effects over my life in a global way. Also, it's art supplies and it's fun. Yeah, so Wabbit is saying, I lose a lot of stuff in my studio, actually. Yep, that can be something that we really grapple with ADD, and Oh, Jan looked up Marla's Husky project and reports back that it is wow and wow. So, all right. Oh, the gods must be crazy. The one that's set in Africa where they're uh so there's indigenous peoples and they've encountered a Coca-Cola bottle. That is a that is a that is a very touching. I do like that one. I like What About Bob, and there's another one that's got. Speaking of RVs, it's got Robin Williams in an RV, and I don't know. Somebody will have to throw it in the comments what the title of that one is because it's not coming to the top of my head. But it has got a lot of that absurdist kind of just mayhem. I think at one point they roll the RV into a lake, if I recall. It's just all sorts of stuff going on. Yeah. Hey, Maya, I have a question. If you are you there? Um, oh, the squirrel coming out of the tree. Oh, I love I don't know, the uncle and aunt, the really old people that are there, just, uh, so much funny. That's the kind of movie you're either gonna hate it or you're just gonna make you laugh. Is Cricket? I wonder if Cricket's going tonight. Because if she's not going, I will forge on and we can keep going. But if she's rolling, I will we can yeah, losing time. Having that do you get that sort of thing where you look at or you'll tell somebody, "Oh, I'll just be a minute," or that'll only take a half an hour, and then the time estimating. I'm very time blind myself. Um, that turned out kind of fun. Yeah. Yeah. So if Cricket's not going right now, I will. I think this is almost dry enough to do, and I think I might just push it and do it. What do you guys think? Shall we? All right, good. We'll just forge on. So if she's out there watching, she can drop us a little howdy, and if she wants to roll. I know it's hard when we have two places we want to be at the same time sometimes. Irish Mart, hello. We've been cranking out some pebble drawings tonight. And we had a question about different media and what we use for the background, so I got out the Neocolor 2s and we did this. And I think it's kind of fun to see something start from finish, even though we're running kind of a long one tonight, but it is something satisfying about having something go from start to finish in the same video. So let's do it. Okay, dry enough. Vacation. There's something. Ah, My brain's going to work away on that Robin Williams movie. It wasn't one of his more well-known ones, but it was one I really enjoyed. He was kind of trying to, as I recall, the storyline was he was trying to maybe reconcile. It was separated. The spouses were separated, and they were trying to cobble things back together. And it just there's a trailer that just gets rolled into a lake somewhere. Oh, the planes, trains, and automobiles. Man, I can't. I love that one. I laugh really hard, and it also I cannot watch it. In the end where you find out that he's alone, and like it just has me sobbing. Um, but that is really a beautiful movie. It sets out to be a comedy, right? But it's just gets you right in the heart. Yeah, is that what it is? Silly Wabbit says, I think the Robin Williams movie is called RV. Well, um, there's my brain trying to make it complicated. It's about an RV, but I can't remember what it's called. Just me. My. Oh, there's so many colors in between the colors where they blended together that are just delightful to my eyeballs. I'm kind of geeking out on this, just looking at the colors and getting into the zone. Which is actually what I hope happens for you guys when you're doing any kind of a mindful exercise. I hope that the words and the thinking falls away. And I know I sometimes worry about trying to reconcile what I'm trying to demonstrate, which is quiet mindfulness. It just doesn't have to be, quiet. You could be humming or whistling or doing whatever you want. But verbalizing is a different part of the brain. So I am trying to do two things at once while I'm encouraging you to do one thing at once. But I have found if I only do the one thing, that the 0.00 people want to watch me do that. Did you guys seem to enjoy it if there's a bit of a conversation going on or an explanation? But if you're at your workbench and you're working away and you find that you've just lost track of time and it's sort of everything's just been flowing along, that's what you're after. That is where your brain is replenishing the neurotransmitters that help you feel balanced and happy. You'll get, I think, really any kind of art that you're doing is going to benefit you, but it's particularly the kind where you can get into a flow state, because it's just really helpful. And instead of, the alternative would be to come away from it feeling like you were drained. And I'm hoping to set an example that encourages you to have an art practice where you feel positivity. Maybe not physically energized, but mentally refreshed and more focused and more inspired. Now, using that media that was applied in a crayon format has made different shapes than the backgrounds that I make just using a brush do. So that is drawing me into this a little bit more deeply than usual. That's not a problem, though. Switching up tasks can help us to develop our flexibility so we can be a little bit more nimble when things come up. And inevitably, situations arise, or, we can't find the material that we wanted. We can't put our hands on it. We've got to make an adjustment, and if we can be more flexible, that increases our capacity to tolerate those challenges when they come up, and they do. That's just life. You can keep all your stuff together, and then the RVs of the world will find their way to your driveway. That's just how it goes. Ooh, kind of. I turned that one around and it felt really upside down. They don't usually have so much of an orientation. It's every once in a while, I guess. I'll get one. Oh, yeah. So Marla says, it reminds me of some of the interiors of the petrified forest and geodes. Oh, thank you. Above and Beyond loves the colors. Yeah, like a little color therapy to shift the mood a bit. Try to go with something in the earth tones when I want to feel more grounded or calm down. And sometimes when I'm feeling a little bit down, it's helpful to have energizing colors or uplifting colors, something more cheery. Hmm. Wouldn't it be something if you were walking along a beach and saw rocks of these colors just scattered about? Yeah, it does look a bit Eastery. Mm. Wabbit says, I always know when a holiday is coming because one of my neighbors' big RV is parked in their driveway. Oh, you're lucky. All right, above and beyond it, thank you for coming in and spending time with us. It was nice to meet you too. They're heading off. It's time for sleep in their world, so. Alrighty, guys, we are just topping out on 2 hours here. Yes, please do. Marla says, please come back again above. Good night, and I echo that sentiment. Time for the art show. If anybody's got any questions or comments, I always love seeing those afterwards. Oh, good. Good. And I sure appreciate you guys watching and everybody who chats and gives the video a like. And welcome new subscribers. I know we've picked up a couple of the stream, so thank you to everybody who's been along for the ride, and welcome to everybody who's coming along for the ride. I hope that you will try to maintain an even strain as we're going through the next days. They're just days. It's just paper. And any day, just a piece of paper on the page on the calendar. Well, they might be easy days, they might be full days or challenging days, but like all days, we will just rip that page off and we'll get a new fresh one tomorrow. So hang in there and take care of yourself. The more you're kind to yourself, the more likely you're able to find kindness for others. So Maya says, let's just double check the chat here. Irish Mart, I'd much prefer an Easter egg than a Christmas pudding. I'm with you there. And Maya says, let's get around this Christmas stuff. We'll pretend it's Easter. Easter's good. I mean, there's chocolate, there's candy. There's bunnies, chocolate eggs. It's it's light outside. There's little flowers blooming. Thank you, Irish says. Beautiful pebbles. And oh, you guys are so. I love that. Thank you so for being so nice and welcoming. Alrighty. Well, um, it's going to be a streaming week. Maya and I will be streaming tomorrow, so you'll have a place to check in and watch us do a little bit of art. And as always, we can't make art without talking about art supplies and making some swatches. Um, just a little preview. I have been swatching the daylights out of the Daniel Smith samples, so we have all kinds of new things to explore and a couple of new mixes, and I just know that we'll just get up to our elbows in art supplies and art supply talk. And if I know Maya, she'll have a landscape painting going, and I'm always bringing the pebble exercises. And yeah, for me it's I think it's Monday night. I hope it's Monday night. Yeah, it better be Monday night. But Maya's in Norway, so it's already tomorrow for her. Well, it's not hundreds of thousands. It's there's some duplicates here because I've got my basic colors of things that are in the palette, and then I picked up a swatch card, so I wanted to take a look at how the paint, and not a swatch card, but a dot card with watercolors on it from Daniel Smith. And so I made some little swatches. It's a little hard to tell from the paint what it's going to look like when you use it. So I had activated the paints and then just made some little tabbies because I am, this will surprise no one, planning to buy more paint. So I had some ideas about what I wanted, but it really looks very different. So I've worked, just not a lot because it's just a little dot on the card, but I could get it a little bit of paint going and then to get it on the paper, and then I have some idea of what the properties of the paint are in terms of its opacity and whether or not it's going to granulate, and granulating, making these wonderful textures, which I love those for the rocks. And I'm glad I did because I've got a couple of new choices that I would not have, I don't think my eye would have, I wouldn't have ordered them without seeing them. And once I painted with them just a little bit, then I got really excited about what the paint was doing. So I found this well worth the $5. So that will be in the coming weeks to get some new paints in. We still have a couple in the paint box that are recent additions that we haven't really explored too much. So I've got those other two paintings that are coming off the blocks. I've got a couple, so that means I've got a couple of fresh blocks. We can start some new rock paintings, and we'll just be doing that on Christmas Eve and on Christmas Day. The 24th and 25th. We don't have to holiday-ize them. And if you guys are, want to join us, that's terrific. If you're just passing through and give us a wave on your way by while you're going from this to that, that's terrific. But I wanted to just have something going so that there was a little bit of an arty place to check into on those days. So, Wabbit says, I have enough paint. Says no artist ever. Yeah. Yeah, I probably don't have enough paper. That's and then you're like, well, I have all this to Does anybody ever say I have all this paper and I need to go buy paint, or is it just I'm trying to keep the stock of paper up to keep pace with the paint acquisition? I don't know, but if I don't get some of those paintings off the blocks, then it makes it a little bit hard to start a new painting. So we just have to move stuff through, and just remember it's a piece of paper. It's not world peace. It's not. It's just a little bit of a little bit of inner peace right where you are there. So uh, yeah, Maya says always short on paper. I'm not wrong. You're not wrong. Everybody, take good care of yourselves, and we'll see you later today, or maybe tomorrow. Later today, tomorrow if you're in Norway or in Europe, and also again on Wednesday. So, bye everybody. Thank you guys. Oh, there's Tiff. I knew. I'm always like I know there's gonna be one more thing. Yeah. For those of you on replay crew, you can watch the live chat replay, and it does take a bit for that to process and get attached to the video. So, if you are on replay, there's really nothing terribly critical. I would recommend you wait for the live play to attach because it does add a lot to this. I do try to read the comments so that it's not just random, and I try to stay with it, but I think it really adds something when you can see the other artists that are here. So, yeah, Tiff, it's good to see you, and we'll see you guys a little later. Bye now.